Hello, welcome back to Let's Play Jane's Fighters Anthology as we continue with the aircraft showcase. So today we are back to military aircraft. Not the exciting ones, unfortunately, but certainly a very important one, and that is the Lockheed C-5 Galaxy. So for this mission, we'll just be simulating a simple flight. We're coming in from the northwest here. As you can see, we're starting off map a little bit. Actually, I'm going to move that back even further. We're basically just going to come in. It's simulating a flight from of U.S. military transports from Great Britain, coming into Lviv here to drop off supplies for Ukraine in their fight against Russia. So that's going to kind of be the setup for this scenario. And I'm not gonna simulate, Russian interception or anything, or escorts. We'll just assume that's all happening somewhere else. But yeah, that's basically gonna be our setup here. And I should have, Alright, so first off, I got a brand new joystick, so I actually have to activate that. So let's do this. Alright. And apparently next time I need to look at my service ceiling better. So hopefully my wingman can recover. Alright, come on. Alright, they recovered. Perfect. So I guess we'll be doing this flight at 20,000 feet instead. And, oh, it's beautiful having a rudder that works. So I guess something was wrong with the joystick after all, because it just stopped like talking to the computer completely. So I don't know what was up with it. I don't know why the rudder was only not working in Fighters Anthology. But in any case, now that we've we even got AG radar, so that'll help. As you can see, anything outside the map, Fighters Anthology just makes water. So just pretend there's ground underneath us. So, with that, let's get into the history of the C-5. And it all starts with the CXX and Heavy Logistics System. In 1961, several aircraft companies began studying heavy jet transport designs that would replace the Douglas C-133 Cargo Master and complement the Lockheed C-141 Starlifters. In addition to higher overall performance, the United States Army wanted to transport aircraft with a lower cargo bay than the C-141, whose interior was too small, a larger cargo bay than the C-141, whose interior was too small to carry a variety of their outsized equipment. These studies led to the CX-4 design concept, but in 1962 the proposed six-engine design was rejected because it was not viewed as a significant advance over the C-141. By late 1963, the next conceptual design was named CX-X. It was equipped with 4 engines instead of 6 in the earlier CX-4 concept. The CXX had a gross weight of 550,000 pounds, a maximum payload of 180,000 pounds, and a speed of Mach 0.75. The cargo compartment was 17.2 feet wide by 13.5 feet high and 100 feet long, with front and rear access doors. United States Air Force studies showed that high bypass turbofan engines were needed for thrust and fuel efficiency requirements. The criteria was finalized, and an official request for proposal was issued in April of 1964 for the Heavy Logistics System CX-HLS, previously the CXX program, and in May 1964 proposals for aircraft were received from Boeing, Douglas, General Dynamics, Lockheed, and Martin Marietta. General Electric, Curtiss-Wright, and Pratt & Whitney submitted proposals for the engines. After a down select, Boeing, Douglas, and Lockheed were given one-year study contracts for the airframe, along with General Electric and Pratt & Whitney for the engines. All three of the designs shared a number of features. The cockpit was placed well above the cargo area to allow for cargo loading through a nose door. The Boeing and Douglas designs used a pod on top of the fuselage containing the cockpit, while the Lockheed design extended the cockpit profile down the length of the fuselage, giving it an egg-shaped cross-section. All of the designs had swept wings, as well as front and rear cargo doors, allowing simultaneous loading and unloading. Lockheed's design featured a T-tail, while the designs by Boeing and Douglas had conventional tails. The Air Force considered Boeing's design to be better than that of Lockheed, but Lockheed's proposal was the lowest total cost bid. Lockheed was selected as the winner in September 1965, then awarded contract in December of 1965. General Electric's TF-39 engine was selected in August 1965 to power the new transport plane. At the time, GE's engine concept was revolutionary, as all engines before had a bypass ratio of less than 2-to-1, while the TF-39 promised and would achieve a ratio of 8-to-1, which had the benefits of increased engine thrust and lower fuel consumption. The first C-5A Galaxy, serial number 66-8303, was rolled out of the manufacturing plant in Marietta, Georgia, on the 2nd of March, 1968. And flight testing of C-5A began with the first flight, flown by Leo Sullivan with the call sign 8303 Heavy. Flight tests revealed that the aircraft exhibited a higher drag divergence Mach number than predicted by wind tunnel data, and the maximum lift coefficient measured in flight with the flaps deflected at 40 degrees was higher than predicted at 2.6 versus 2.38, but was lower than predicted with the flaps deflected at 25 degrees, 2.31 versus 2.38, and with the flaps retracted 1.45 versus 1.52. Aircraft weight was a serious issue during design and development. At the time of the first flight, the weight was below the guaranteed weight, but by the time of the delivery of the 9th aircraft had exceeded guarantees. In July 1969, during a fuselage upbending test, the wing failed at 128% of limit load, which is below the requirement that it sustain 150% of limit load. Changes were made to the wing, but during a test in July 1970, it failed at 125% of limit load. A passive load reduction system involving uprigged ailerons was incorporated, but the maximum allowable payload was reduced from 220,000 pounds to 190,000 pounds. At the time, a 90% probability predicted that no more than 10% of the fleet of 79 airframes would reach their fatigue life in 19,000 hours without cracking in the wing. Cost overruns and technical problems of the C-5A were the subject of a congressional investigation in 1968 and 1969. The C-5 program has the dubious distinction of being the first development program with a $1 billion overrun, which is equivalent to $7.4 billion today. Due to the C-5's troubled development, the Department of Defense abandoned total package procurement. In 1969, Henry Durham raised concerns about the C-5 production process with Lockheed, his employer. Subsequently, Durham was transferred and subjected to abuse until he resigned. The Government Accountability Office substantiated some of his charges against Lockheed, and later the American Ethical Union honored Durham with the Elliott Black Award. The Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Management Systems, Ernest Fitzgerald, was another person whose fostering of public accountability was unwelcome. Upon completion of testing in December of 1969, the first C-5A was transferred to the Transitional Training Unit at Atlas Air Force Base, Oklahoma. Lockheed delivered the first operational Galaxy to the 437th Airlift Wing, Charleston Air Force Base, South Carolina, in June of 1970. Due to higher than expected development costs in 1970, public calls were made for the government to split the substantial losses that Lockheed was experiencing. Production was nearly brought to a halt in 1971 as Lockheed went through financial difficulties due in part to the C-5 Galaxy's development, as well as the civilian jetliner, the Lockheed L-1011. The U.S. government gave loans to Lockheed to keep the company operational. In the early 1970s, NASA considered the C-5 for the shuttle carrier aircraft role to transport the space shuttle to Kennedy Space Center. However, they rejected it in favor of the Boeing 747, in part due to the 747's low-wing design. In contrast, the Soviet Union chose to transport its shuttles using the high-winged AN-225, which derived from the AN-124, which is similar in design and function to the C-5. During static and fatigue testing, cracks were noticed in the wings of several aircraft, and as a consequence, the C-5A fleet was restricted to 80% of maximum design loads. To reduce wing loading, load alleviation systems were added to the aircraft, and by 1980, payloads were restricted to as low as 50,000 pounds for general cargo during peacetime operations. A $1.5 billion program, equivalent to $7.1 billion today, known as HMOD, to re-wing the 76 completed C-5As to restore full payload capability and service life began in 1976. After design and testing of new wing design, the C-5As received their new wings from 1980 to 1987. In 1974, Iran, then having good relations with the United States, offered $160 million, which would be cinematic speed. Now, we don't want to do that now, do we? Alright, let's pull the nose up a little bit there. Iran offered the United States $160 million, equivalent to $879 million today, to restart C-5 production to enable Iran to purchase aircraft for their own air force in a similar climate as to the acquisition of F-14 Tomcat fighters. However, no C-5 aircraft were ever ordered by Iran, and the prospect was firmly halted by the Iranian Revolution of 1979. As part of President Ronald Reagan's military policy, funding was made available for the expansion of the United States Air Force's airlift capability. With the C-17 program still some years from completion, Congress approved funding for a new version of the C-5B in July of 1982 to expand airlift capacity. The first C-5B was delivered to Atlas Air Force Base in January of 1986, and in April of 1989, the last of 50 C-5B aircraft were added to the 77 C-5As in the Air Force's airlift force structure. The C-5B includes all C-5A improvements and numerous additional system modifications to improve reliability and maintainability. In 1998, the Avionics Modernization Program began upgrading the C-5's avionics to include a glass cockpit, navigation equipment, and a new autopilot system. Another part of the C-5 modernization effort is the Reliability Enhancement and Re-engining Program, or RERP. The program replaced the engines with newer, more powerful engines. A total of 52 C-5s are contracted to be modernized, consisting of 49 B, 2C, and 1A model aircraft through the RERP. The program features over 70 changes and upgrades, including the newer General Electric engines. 3 C-5s underwent RERP for testing purposes and low-rate initial production started in August of 2009, with Lockheed reaching full production in May of 2011. 22 C-5M Super Galaxies have been completed as of August 2014. RERP upgrades were completed on the 25th of July of 2018, and the Air Force received the last modified aircraft on the 1st of August 2018. As of 2014, Lockheed is investigating drag reduction by plasma heating of turbulent transonic airflow in critical points, saving overall weight by reducing fuel consumption. The Air Force Research Laboratory is looking at shape memory alloy for the speed-dependent vortex generators. Well, there's some sci-fi sounding stuff if I've ever heard any. Alright, as far as the design goes, the C-5 is a large high-wing cargo aircraft with the distinctive high T-tail fin, or vertical stabilizer, with 4 TF-39 turbofan engines, mounted on pylons beneath wings that are swept 25 degrees. And the C-5M uses newer GECF-6 engines. Similar in layout to its smaller predecessor, the C-141 Starlifter, the C-5 has 12 internal wing tanks and is equipped for aerial refueling. Above the plane-length cargo deck is an upper deck for flight operations and for seating 80 passengers in rear-facing seats, and the embarked loadmaster crew in forward-facing seats. Bay doors at both nose and tail open to enable drive-through loading and unloading of cargo. Cargo hold of the C-5 is 1 foot longer than the entire length of the first powered flight by the Wright brothers at Kitty Hawk. For its voracious consumption of fuel and its maintenance and reliability issues, the Galaxy's aircrews have nicknamed it FRED, for fucking ridiculous economic and environmental disaster. Takeoff and landing distance requirements for the plane at maximum load gross weight are 8,300 feet and 4,900 feet, respectively. Its high flotation main landing gear provides 28 wheels to distribute gross weight on paved or earth surfaces, and the rear main landing gear can be made to caster to make a smaller turning radius and rotate 90 degrees after takeoff before being retracted. Kneeling landing gear permits lowering the aircraft when parked, thereby presenting the cargo deck at truck bed height to facilitate loading and unloading operations. The C-5 features a malfunction detection analysis and recording system to identify errors throughout the aircraft. The cargo compartment is 121 feet long, 13.5 feet high, and 19 feet wide, or just over 31,000 cubic feet. It can accommodate up to 36 463-liter master pallets or a mix of palletized cargo and vehicles. The nose and aft cargo bay doors open the full width and height of the cargo bay to maximize efficient loading of oversized equipment. Full-width ramps enable loading double rows of vehicles from either end of the cargo hold. C-5 Galaxy is capable of moving nearly every type of military combat equipment, including such bulky items as the Army Armored Vehicle Launched Bridge at 74 short tons from the United States to any location on the globe, and accommodating up to 6 Boeing AH-64 Apache helicopters or 5 Bradley fighting vehicles at one time. The first C-5A was delivered to the United States Air Force on 17th of December of 1969. Wings were built up in the early 1970s at Atlas Air Force Base, Oklahoma, Charleston Air Force Base, South Carolina, Dover Air Force Base in Delaware, and Travis Air Force Base in California. C-5's first mission was on the 9th of July 1970 in Southeast Asia during the Vietnam War. C-5s were used to transport equipment and troops, including Army tanks and even some small aircraft, throughout the later years of the U.S. action in Vietnam. In the final weeks of the war, prior to the fall of Saigon, several C-5s were involved in evacuation efforts. During one such mission, a C-5A crashed while transporting a large number of orphans with over 140 killed. C-5s have also been used to deliver support and reinforce various U.S. allies over the years. During the Yom Kippur War in 1973, multiple C-5s and C-141 Starlifters delivered critical supplies of ammunition, replacement weaponry, and other forms of aid to Israel in an effort that the U.S. named Operation Nickel Grass. C-5 Galaxy's performance in Israel was such that the Pentagon began to consider further purchases. C-5 was regularly made available to support American allies, such as the British-led Peacekeeper Initiative in Zimbabwe in 1979. On the 24th of October 1974, the Space and Missile Systems Organization successfully conducted an air-launched ballistic missile test where C-5A Galaxy aircraft airdropped an 86,000-pound Minuteman ICBM from 20,000 feet over the Pacific Ocean. The missile descended to 8,000 feet before its rocket engine fired. The 10-second engine burn carried the missile to 20,000 feet again before it dropped into the ocean. The test proved the feasibility of launching an intercontinental ballistic missile from the air. Operational deployment was discarded due to engineering and security difficulties, though the capability was used as a negotiating point in the Strategic Arms Limitation talks. Aircraft 69-0014, used in the test, was retired to the Air Force Air Mobility Command Museum at Dover Air Force Base. And it looks like we are... Well, we basically hit our first waypoint, so... Oh, wow, we are... Alright, we are actually just about at the airfield now. Alright, so... let's begin our descent, and we'll see about finding the... pull back on the engines here, and we'll see about finding Lviv Airfield. Man, this thing just really wants to go fast. Alright. I suppose I can make my descent a little more shallow, too. But, I gotta say, I'm learning stuff from this. I always thought the C-5 was pretty highly regarded. I didn't realize its development history was so troubled. I think now it's still highly regarded, just because it can carry so fucking much. And, you know, like the thing said, it's longer, its cargo bay is longer than the Wright brothers' first flight, which really puts it into perspective. And I've actually been on C-5s, not in the air, but they have them. They're a regular showcase at EAA, and they've done that where they'll just open up the front and rear cargo doors and kneel the aircraft down, and you just walk through it. It's really, really ginormous. Alright, let's make a turn 100 degrees to port here and see if we can find the Lviv airfield here. It should be... We should be pretty well lined up, assuming that the runway goes north. So probably somewhere around there. And EAA has also had these transports just fly over the grounds at low altitude, and boy, does that put the fear of God in you. Even knowing, you know, it's not an armed aircraft, you know, obviously it's on our side, but just the amount of sheer raw power that this thing has in terms of like engine power and in terms of carrying capacity is just tremendous. It is awe-inspiring. There's our airfield. Oh, perfect, and we're already lined up. Alright, let's switch to navigation mode here. And I do like how on the model, we'll look more at the ground, but I think there's an air mobility command decal on the aircraft. Hey, where'd the airport go? It disappeared! Ah! Should pop back in momentarily. I hope. Oh, there it is. Yeah, I don't... That was so weird that it's like, oh, we're not going to show that to you anymore. Alright. And actually, you can even see they put the rear cargo door on the aircraft here, which is kind of neat. Alright, let's deploy those landing gear, which, that is not the number of landing gear this aircraft has. That is not sufficient at all to support this aircraft's weight. I'm a little surprised, because we saw in the Boeing 747, which isn't, as far as I know, even used in a mission. They did a pretty good job on the landing gear there, I thought. But then this thing has like, oh yeah, it's just got 3 sets of 2 landing gear each. It's like, no it does not. It has like 28 landing gear. Alright, so we're still a little... Okay, let's start pulling the engine down. And we gotta move the port a little bit here. Are our wingmen still trying to... Okay, now they're breaking off. And we are just not making any progress. There we go. Hey, there's the rest of the airport now. That helps. Alright, we're gonna come down in altitude a little bit. We keep drifting to the right for some reason. Let's see if we can recenter ourselves here. And we'll cut the throttle a little bit. And come on. There we go. Now we can increase to 25% here to kind of smoothen the landing here. I even increase that to 30%. And we should be good. You can see, as far as the game's concerned, we're coming in very, very slowly. Yeah, we keep drifting for some reason. I don't know why. There we go. Thrust reversers on! Actually, I don't know if it has thrust reversers. I think it does, just to improve its maneuverability at, like small forward airfields, but especially where they might not have like a tractor available for towing it. But we are down. The Ukrainians will have their javelins and their HIMARS, however you want to say it. Which this could probably fit a half dozen easy of HIMARS, I would imagine. Alright, so let's throttle up to 25% here, and we will taxi over... which way? To the left. Alright. Oh man, see, you could tell the game wasn't designed for this just because the view is so weird. It doesn't handle being where you are in relation to the rest of the aircraft. It just feels so zoomed in. Alright, so we will taxi on over. And we're just going to break all the traffic laws here. Alright, let's hit those brakes and park. Maybe. Oh, we've got a lot to burn off yet. A lot of speed. And we can see our wingman coming in now. I think we can get one more good spin in. And he is touchdown. And what you'll see when it comes to our wingmen, they will the AI in general with these large aircraft just grossly overshoots the airfield. Oh, there we go. That's a pretty good park job. Let's see if I can get the tail in view. Yeah. Oh, hey, well, Dover Air Force Base, unit serial number 34676. So that's the one they use for their inspiration, I guess. And yep, there you can see they run off the short airfields in the game. So while our wingmen come in for landing, let's continue with the history of the C-5. The C-5 has been used for several unusual functions. During the development of the secretive stealth fighter, the Lockheed F-117 Nighthawk, Galaxies were often used to carry partly disassembled aircraft, leaving no exterior signs as to their cargo. The C-5 remains the largest aircraft to operate in the Antarctic, capable of operating from Williams Field near McMurdo Station. C-5 Galaxy was a major supply asset in the international coalition operations in 1990 and 1991 against Iraq and the Gulf War. C-5s have routinely delivered relief aid and humanitarian supplies to areas afflicted with natural disasters or crises. Multiple flights were made over Rwanda in 1994, and the C-5 is also used to transport Marine One. The wings on the C-5As were replaced during the 1980s to restore full design capability. The United States Air Force took delivery of the first C-5B on 28th of December 1985, and the final one in April 1989. The reliability of the C-5 fleet has been a continued issue throughout its lifetime. However, the C-5M upgrade program seeks in part to address this issue. Their strategic airlift capacity has been a key logistical component of U.S. military operations in Afghanistan and Iraq. Following an incident during Operation Iraqi Freedom where one C-5 was damaged by a projectile, the installation of defensive systems has become a stated priority. The C-5 AMP and RERP modernization programs plan to raise mission-capable rate to a minimum goal of 75%. Over the next 40 years, the U.S. Air Force estimates the C-5M will save over $20 billion. The first C-5M conversion was completed on the 16th of May 2006, and C-5Ms began test flights at Dobbins Air Reserve Base in June of 2006. In 2008, the United States Air Force decided to convert remaining C-5Bs and C-5Cs into C-5Ms with avionics upgrades and re-engining. The C-5As will receive only the avionics upgrades. The last of the 52 C-5Ms was delivered to Air Mobility Command in August of 2018. In response to Air Force plans to retire older C-5 aircraft, Congress implemented legislation that set limits on retirement plans for C-5As in 2003. As of November 2013, 45 C-5As have been retired, 11 have been scrapped, parts of one are now a cargo load trainer at Lackland Air Force Base in Texas, and one was sent to Warner Robins Air Logistics Center for teardown and inspection to evaluate structural integrity and estimate the remaining life of the fleet. The U.S. Air Force began to receive refitted C-5M aircraft in December of 2008. Full production of C-5Ms began in the summer of 2009, and in 2009 the congressional ban on the retirement of C-5s was overturned. The Air Force seeks to retire one C-5A for every 10 new C-17s ordered. In October of 2011, the 445th Airlift Wing based at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base replaced all remaining C-5s with C-17s. C-5M reached initial operating capability on the 24th of February 2014 with 16 aircraft delivered. On the 13th of September 2009, a C-5M set 41 new records and flight data was submitted to the National Aeronautic Association for formal recognition. C-5M had carried a payload of 176,610 pounds to over 41,100 feet in 23 minutes 59 seconds. Additionally, 33 timed climb records at various payload classes were set, and the world record for greatest payload to 6,562 feet was broken. The aircraft was in the category of 551,200 pound to 661,400 pound aircraft, with a takeoff weight of 649,680 pounds, including payload, fuel, and other equipment. On the 18th of July 2017, C-5s based at Dover were ordered to stand down so maintenance crews could determine the cause for some nose landing gear failing. The last TF-39 powered C-5 flew in late 2017, and it looks like our wingmen are going to be silly and do their infinite loop of takeoff and landing. Which is really annoying, but...
Delta, bearing 149.
Anyways, as far as variants go, you have the original C-5A variant, the C-5B, which includes all of the improvements that were made to the C-5A during its life, plus improved wings, simplified landing gear, and an upgrade to the TF-39 GE1C turbofan engines, and updated avionics. And you have the C-5C, which is a specially modified variant for transporting large cargo, and two C-5As were specially modified to have a larger internal cargo capacity to accommodate large payloads such as satellites. And these modifications involve the removal of the rear passenger compartment floor and splitting the rear cargo door in the middle and installing a new movable aft bulkhead further to the rear. This version is officially referred to as the C-5A SCM Space Cargo Modified. Modifications also included adding a second inlet for ground power, which can feed any power-dependent equipment that may form part of the cargo. The two C-5Cs are operated by United States Air Force crews for DoD spacecraft programs and NASA and are stationed at Travis Air Force Base, California. And both have also been modified to the C-5M standard as of 2017. As far as the C-5AMP and C-5M Super Galaxy variants go, a study showed that 8% of the C-5's airframe's service life was remaining, so Air Mobility Command began an aggressive program to modernize all remaining C-5Bs and C-5Cs and many of the C-5As. The C-5 Avionics Modernization Program, or AMP, began in 1998 and includes upgrading the avionics to comply with global air traffic management standards, improving communications, fitting new flat panel displays, improving navigation and safety equipment, and installing a new autopilot system. The first flight of a C-5 with AMP occurred on the 21st of December 2002. The Reliability Enhancement and Re-engineering Program, or RERP, began in 2006, and that, as we had previously discussed, includes fitting the new General Electric F-138 GE100 engines, pylons, and auxiliary power units, and upgrades to the aircraft's skin and frame, landing gear, cockpit, and pressurization systems. Each CF6 engine produces 22% more thrust, providing a 30% shorter takeoff, a 38% higher climb rate to initial altitude, an increased cargo load, and a longer range. Upgraded C-5Ms are designated the C-5M Galaxy. Lockheed also tried to make a civilian... You can see it just can't climb fast enough, so it's literally just driving up the hill. That's kind of funny. I got the airfield targeted. I really want to see that. I love the jank in these old games. Oh, come on. There we go. Oh no. Yeah. Ah, that's funny. I guess they, that's the problem with the whole Ukraine theater to begin with, though. It's just, it's so mountainous in some areas that the AI just can't handle it. Because all the altimeters are calibrated to above sea level as opposed to above ground level. So, like, he's trying to follow his altitude profile for takeoff that the AI has for this aircraft, and he can't because the mountain is higher than his takeoff profile, which is really funny. Or at least I assume that's what's going on here, and I think he'll clear this peak. Anyways, the L500 was Lockheed's attempt to make a civilian version of the C-5, but and it would have been humongous. It would have carried 1,000 passengers, and an all-cargo version obviously would have just carried what the C-5 already carries. No orders were placed for either version, though, because of huge operational costs that were caused by a low fuel efficiency, which was a big concern for airlines even before the oil crisis. And that's what also ended up stifling the 747's production, too. And then Lockheed had proposed the C-5 shuttle carrier, but obviously that ended up going to Boeing. And currently the only operators of the C-5 is the United States Air Force and the Air Mobility Command. And the specs for the C-5M Super Galaxy, as they are today, it has a crew of 7, aircraft commander, pilot, 2 flight engineers, 3 loadmasters. It can fly with 4, though, just the pilot, co-pilot, and 2 flight engineers. Its capacity is 36 master pallets of 463L spec at 281,000 pounds. The aircraft is 247 feet long, 222 feet wide, and has a height of 65 feet, with a wing area of 6,200 square feet. Empty weight is 380,000 pounds, so this aircraft is just absolutely ginormous, with a max takeoff weight of 840,000 pounds. Fuel capacity is 51,150 US gallons, and it's powered by 4 General Electric F138-100 turbofan engines, producing 51,000 pound-foot of force each. A little water buffalo vice in there. Maximum speed is 462 knots, or about Mach 0.79, so a bit slower than the 747. Cruise speed is 450 knots, and unrefueled range is 4,800 nautical miles with a 120,000 pound payload, or 2,300 nautical miles with maximum cargo capacity. Ferry range is 7,000 nautical miles with no cargo on board, and a service ceiling of 41,000 feet at 750,000 pounds. Rate of climb is 2,100 feet per minute. Thrust to weight ratio of 0.26, which is atrocious, but to be expected. Takeoff run of 5,400 feet and a landing run of 3,600 feet. So that is all the key stats about the C-17. So yeah, this is the giant monster that basically supplies America's international operations. And she is a big one. So I think we're going to call it there. And obviously, mission is just generally a success because we didn't do anything. So next time we will be continuing the aircraft showcases, and we'll see what's next. I believe it's another transport. Yeah, the Goldmaster, Hercules. So we got a bit of some boring stuff to get through, but then we'll get to some fighters again that although I've done most of these already, so we're probably going to end up somewhere around probably starting with the IAI Kiefer. But in any case, that'll conclude today's episode, so thank you all for watching and stay tuned for next time, and stay safe out there, and we'll see you then.